Who are the Pathans? Pathans, the fierce warrior-like people who love freedom and surrender to no enemy, be it the mightiest of kingdoms. Nowadays their very names are used as the names of movies. However, there is much reasoning behind this in order to understand the true meaning behind the word Pathan and understand who they are, where they come from and what they have done. Who must explore the history of the Pathans. Before we get started, I must clarify something. Pathan, Avon, I'm sure many of you have heard of these terms. However, what you might not know is that historically these three terms have actually never been distinguishable in their meanings. Pashtun and Afghan were used interchangeably, and Pathan was just a different pronunciation of the word Pashtun. Why is it that today they have slightly different meanings? I will get into that later, but for now I will call them Afghans. Afghans are the indigenous people of the land, referred to as the crossroad of Asia thousands of years ago. This region was called Aryana after the rise of Islam. The region was then called Khorasan, and after the birth of the independent Afghan nation, the area was then called Afghanistan. Although throughout history several different groups and dynasties ruled over the land of the Afghans, it must be noted that the Afghans throughout history were for the most part undisturbed by governmental rule and enjoyed autonomy. This was partly due to the rough mountainous terrain of their homeland, but also largely due to their brave and resistant instincts. Though the Afghans were submissive to their tribal chiefs and strongly held on to their code of beliefs and conduct known as this way of life consisted of hospitality. Even if it was to their enemy, courage, even if it meant the risk of death, freedom at all costs, justice, revenge, honoring their woman, patriotism, respect, arbitration, kindness, faith, and fulfilling their promises. Even after the arrival of Islam in the region, the Afghans held on to these beliefs and traditions, which only added on to their firm faith. A well-known quality about the Afghans is that as far as one can trace back in history, the Afghans have always been extremely resistant to foreign rule and influence. Many historians believe that Cyrus himself, the founder of the Great Persian Empire, was killed by the ancestors of the Afghans. Even Alexander the Great had to face the terrible resistance of this particular nation. The Arabs, Mongols, Mohuds, and in more recent times the British, Russians, and Americans all tried subduing the Afghan nation without finding any success. Thus the land of the Afghans was named the Graveyard of Empires. Afghanistan was the birthplace of many different kingdoms, such as that of the Horas and the Rosenavids, which were not considered indigenous, though they were Afghanized. However, the Afghans themselves also eventually united to create their own empires and conquer vast regions outside their homeland as well. Some of the great indigenous Afghan empires were the Lodi Empire, the Suri Empire, the Hotek Empire, the Khilji Empire, and the Great Durrani Empire. Thus Afghans not only proved themselves as warriors who protected their own lands, but also as mighty conquerors that spread the rule over vast regions. The birth of modern Afghanistan is believed to have been the same year the Ahmad Shah Durrani, the father of the modern Afghan nation, united the Afghan tribes to create an independent Afghan state that expanded over many neighboring realms and kingdoms. This empire was long-lived, as it would last all the way until when a communist school took over rulership. Ahmad Shah Durrani had established such Ephraim empire. The Afghanistan would forever remain a free and independent state, even at a time when just about the entire Muslim world was colonized or imperialized by the Western world. Afghans ended up fighting 3 wars against the British during their invasions. This series of wars became known as the Anglo-Afghan Wars. However, because Britain found no success against Afghan resistance, they found a way to forever weaken the Afghans. In their famous strategy of division, the British would split Afghanistan in half through their puppet rulers. Thus Afghanistan would lose the hybrid pass and their nation would be split in half. The British would divide Afghanistan in such a way that half a tribe would be on one side while the other half would be on the other side. A farmer would live on one side with his farm on the other. Even families and relatives would be separated by this new border. The thousands of years old homeland of the Afghans was effectively divided for decades. The Afghans resisted this border and the Afghan government would forever disapprove of it as well. However, with the creation of the state of Pakistan, the Durian Line was seen as a much greater danger. No one had ever imagined that the Durian Line would outlive the British Empire itself and become the permanent borders of a newly created state. Thus the state of Pakistan, which itself was a portion of India, which was also divided by the British, but claimed the Durian Line as the official border and the hybrid pass as their own. Pakistan would first name this avian land of theirs the Northwestern Frontier Province, which is now known as KPK. Despite this division, the Afghans on both sides of the borders held firmly onto their beliefs, traditions, way of life, and instincts. After decades, some Afghans in KPK began forgetting their true identity and referred to themselves as Pakistani Pashtuns. This was slightly due to the fact that the term Afghan had a broader meaning at this point. It was no longer used only for Pashtuns but Also for all the citizens of Afghanistan as well. This created a national identity and united all the different minorities of the region such as the Tajiks, Uzbeks, Hazaras, Nurustanis and etc. Thus some of the Pashtuns on Pakistan's side of the border forgot the original meaning of the word Afghan, though in places such as Waziristan Pashtuns never forgot about the Durian line that split them apart from their kin, and so they firmly held on to their Afghan identity. However, this was not without consequences. Now we understand the meanings of Pashtun and Afghan. However, how did the word Pathan come into the equation? The answer is simple. The Indians used to pronounce the word Pashtun as Pathan. Thus during the time in which the British were ruling over India, they adopted the phrase as well, hence it became a variant of the word Pashtun, which meant Afghan. As the Pashtuns fought wars and conquered many regions of India, the name Pathan grew very popular in the region. Not to mention the Pathan insurrections against the Mohall government too played a role in this. The name Pathan grew to be feared, and even during their times of weakness they're feared as courageous, fierce warriors. Even to this day the Pathans, Avians or Pashtuns are known as courageous people who stick to their Pashtunwali codes of life and don't hesitate to defend their land from powerful invaders. Because of this they are respected even by their enemies. Wherever you meet a Pathan, whether it be in Afghanistan, Pakistan or India, you will likely know due to their characteristics and way of life foreign. Thank you for watching $0 Studio.